And I'm lucky. Very, very lucky that we have a good life. I was a teacher for many years and we're doing great. And so I need to help people maybe who aren't doing so great. I'm just very, very good at copying. So if I see something, I can copy it. I'm not that creative in that I can do it without actually seeing it in front of me. And sometimes I have to sketch something 2, 3, 4 times before I get it exactly the way I want it. And then I can copy it onto the rock. From the time that I was little, I always loved crafting. My mother was very good. My mother knitted, my mother cooked, my mother did all kinds of things. And from her I learned, and starting from, I guess, very young age, I always loved to do crafts. And when I was about 10 years old, both of my grandfathers passed away. And I wanted to do something special, so I had a loom and I started making pot holders, and then I went around in my apartment building selling them, and all the money that I got for selling them we donated to the Cancer Society because they both died of cancer. So, I mean, even then I wanted to do some good. From my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and we were all very, very close. I was very lucky. I had my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and we spent lots of time together. And my great-grandmother was a wonderful baker. She was amazing, and whenever I went to her house, she had a jar filled with cookies, and I would say, "Can I take one?" And she would say, "Sure." Always, always. I did needlepoint. I did huge pictures. In fact, one of the pictures that I made and I gave to my mother was of a rabbi. And it took, sometimes these needlepoints could take a year or 2 to make, and I had it framed and I gave it to her. And when she passed away, I gave it to a cousin of mine. I did painting. I used to sit out on my front porch and sketch. There was a very interesting house across the street from me, and I used to go outside and copy the house. I originally started in Brooklyn, and I have a master's degree in teaching science. So I used to go from class to class doing science experiments with the children, and then when I moved to Staten Island, and they initiated the gifted program, nobody in the school wanted to take it. Everybody said, "No, not me." And actually, it turned out I was the least senior teacher in the school. And I said, "I'll take it." And I had it for about 15 years. And after I retired from Staten Island and the New York City school system, I went on to teach gifted in Tinton Falls in a special program that they had there for just a couple of years. I also worked in a sleepaway camp for 2 years teaching crafts. So crafting is in my life. Woodworking. We had also a machine where you could engrave, and they had lucite. And so the kids could make, like for the parents, they could make something to put on their desk, and I had a machine that I could use to bend it, so, you know, it became a lucite thing with the parent's name. One girl wanted to make a butterfly, so we figured out with newspaper how to, you know, dip it in flour and water and put it over wire hangers to make a butterfly. And she was working on it, and then one night I slept in the cabin where I did the crafts with the kids, and one night I hear this funny noise sounding like an animal eating something. When I woke up in the morning, he had eaten the paper with the flour from the butterfly, and I had to explain to the girl when she came in to work on it, I'm sorry, it's gone. We'll have to figure something else out. Yeah, when I came back, Wendy said to me, they asked me to do a craft project. Wendy is brilliant. She's fabulous, but she's not a crafter. She doesn't work with her hands. She works with her brain, which is really great. And I said, don't worry, I'll find something. I'll do it for you, because I enjoy doing that. So I went on Pinterest, which is on my phone, and it has all different kinds of crafting ideas. And I found painting rocks. And I said, that's perfect. That's something that anybody can do, so it doesn't matter, you know. And so I bought all the supplies, and I came into the library, and there were about, I would say, 12 to 15 people. And we did the painting rocks, and it went over really, really well. A lot of people do paint rocks, and they'll put a circle on it, or they'll put nothing on it, or they'll paint, you know, stripes on it or whatever. But if you go onto Pinterest, you get a lot of really great ideas, and as I did more and more of it, I got better and better at it, and I started giving them away to people. And then I realized, because when I hit about 100 rocks, and I said, what am I going to do with these, that I could sell them through originally, yeah, it was the Cancer Society in Florida that I sold the rocks. And originally I asked a friend if they would like me to come in when they have their meetings, and I'll bring rocks with me, and whatever money you get for the rocks, I will donate to the Cancer Society. I don't want anything in return. And she said, well, I'll ask their permission. And they said, okay, let her come. Figured, you know, why not? And after the first session, the woman came over to me and said, did you sell any rocks? And I said, yes. And I said, I have some money for you. And she said, how much did you make? And I said, $125. And she said, can you come next month? And I said, sure. So I went back the next month and the month after that, and altogether I was able to make $500, which was a donation to the Cancer Society. And I've done it here too, and for Brandeis. Brandeis is the organization that I belong to in 𝐜𝐴𝐷𝐾. And same thing, I just give them the money when I'm done. I don't want anything for it. Sometimes people just see a rock that I've painted and they say, oh, I like it. And I say, take it, it's yours. And they ask me, well, what can I give you? And I say, just make a donation to your favorite charity. I said, sometimes people ask me, where do you get the rocks? And I say, I shake my head like this and they fall out of my ears. But actually, I take them from different places. I will never take a rock from somebody's garden unless I ask them first. And if I take a rock, I tell them, tell me what you want painted on the rock, and I will return it to you in a couple of days with whatever you like. I have bought rocks. Yes, I have bought them at Home Depot, sells bags of rocks. and so does, let's see, Lowe's sells rocks. You can buy them online. But usually most of the rocks I get, as I'm walking along somewhere, I'll see a rock and I'll pick it up and I'll put it in my pocket. And then I look at it and I think, what can I do on this rock? I make birthday rocks for my friends when it's their birthday. I make a rock for them for their birthday. Anniversaries. We went to a 90th birthday party and we gave a gift, but I also gave them a rock. All my doctors have my rocks. When I go to the doctor, I'll ask them what they like. One of them said golf. I made him a rock with a golf club and a ball sitting on a tee or whatever. And it's interesting because when I go to these doctors, they always mention, I keep your rock on my desk. I made one for my eye doctor where I found this little pair of glasses that I glued onto the rock, and I had an eye chart and some other things, and every time I walk into that doctor's office, he says, your rock is on my desk, and every time I look at it, I think of you. When I go for manicures, when I go for haircuts, whoever works on me, if I go back a second or a third time, I make a rock for them. So my nail person has a rock. I'm working now on a rock for my new nail person here in New Jersey. So I got a whole bunch of, I have nail polish in the house, and I'm copying, and when I'm done, because I told him about my hobby, I'll bring him a rock with the name of the place that I go for the manicure, his name, and some bottles of nail polish that I'll paint on the rock. My grandson was going off to college, and I've made him rocks with his pet cat on it. I've made him all different kinds of rocks. But I said, I want to make one for your college. So I said, what's the mascot? And he's at Muhlenberg. And the mascot for Muhlenberg is a mule. And I said, oh God, now I have to paint a mule. But I found pictures on Pinterest, and I found a mule, and I sketched it out first on paper, just to make sure that I wasn't going to mess up. And then I painted the rock, and it came out really great. I was so proud of that rock. And he has it in college. And he said, and Grandma, I brought it home because college ended for the year and I didn't want anything to happen. He said, I'll bring it back next year because I'll have a new room. I started painting owls, and I would get branches from trees, and I would glue them, and then I would have the owls sitting on the branches. So you'll see that. I did the M&Ms on a canvas, the owls on a canvas, and then, not rocks, but I was eating pistachio nuts, and I was shelling them. And when I looked at the shells, I said, I can do something with this. So I turned them into little fish, and I put them on canvas, and I painted the background, and the bottom was the bottom of the ocean, and I glued shells, and then the fish, I painted the fish to look like a certain kind of fish, and painted the water, and I have those in the showcase now too. But I see things and I think, what can I make out of this? I look at it and I think about what I can do with it. Some rocks I take and then they just sit. I have a whole bucket full of rocks upstairs. My art studio is above the garage in a room that has all the rocks that I've painted, and my paints and all the other things that I use. I use all different kinds of things, and I like to put rocks glue rocks on rocks sometimes. Sometimes they're a little bit rougher, but I like when they're kind of symmetrical. It's nice. But then sometimes I'll have something that's not, and I'll figure out a design that I can do on it that fits. I saw on Pinterest M&Ms with a bite taken out of them. So if I find a rock that has like a chip on the side, that's the bite. And the rock, if it's just the right size and shape, can be an M&M. And I made different color M&Ms. And what I did was I had a whole bunch of the M&Ms, so I went out and I got a canvas, a flat canvas, and I glued them with a special glue, and I made a picture out of it. And one of my friends came in and she saw it and she said, "My grandson loves M&Ms. Could I have the rock?" And I said, "Absolutely, you can have the rock." And actually, she was the one who got me involved with the Cancer Society. So I said, "You've already made enough donations." She gives them a lot of money. I said, "Just take it, it's a present." And so she said, "I'm giving it to my grandchild because he loves M&Ms. You use acrylic paint, and I have a million different paintbrushes, different sizes and shapes. And also, if I want to write on a rock, like I make rocks for people now also that are going to the cemetery. In the Jewish religion, when you go to the cemetery and you go to the grave, you leave a rock. So it's sort of like that I was here and I came. And so people now come to me and they ask me to paint something on a rock that they can bring to the cemetery, and it should be something that the person who was buried there really loved. I just did one with strawberries because supposedly this woman who passed away, and it's a good friend's relative, loved strawberries, and her whole house was decorated with a strawberry motif. So I made a strawberry on a rock, and it was just the perfect shape for a strawberry. And on the back I put the lady's name, and it's interesting, I did that for my best friend, passed away about 4 years ago, and our whole group had played mahjong together, and everybody came to the unveiling. And everybody, I handed a rock with all the things that she loved. And of all things, she loved hummingbirds. So I made rocks with hummingbirds and other things that she liked. And we all left the rocks there. And it's 4 years later, and those rocks are still on the stone. Because people will take rocks sometimes from other people, but because these had her name and they had special things, those rocks are still there. And what I do is, if you want to put the rock outside, I put something called Mod Podge, a couple of layers, and that seals the rock so the paint doesn't chip and doesn't come off, so the rocks can stay outside for years and still be good. Some are teeny tiny, and I have a brush that is minute, that has maybe just a few little bristles. And when I write on the rock, what I do is I take a pencil, and you know where the eraser is? I stick a pin into the eraser. And you know the little thing on the end, the little circle? I use that to write, so I can write very, very small. And it works beautifully. I was a little kid, and I would walk, and I can't believe today that my mother let me do this, but I would walk a mile and a half to the library once a week to take out books. I love to read. And I joined the library first when I lived in Marlborough. I joined in 𝐼𝐴𝐼, and I used to go to the 𝐼𝐴𝐼 library all the time. And then when I came here, I joined the Jackson Library. And then Wendy, my daughter-in-law, came to 𝐜𝐴𝐼𝐼, and she did a class with us, and she told me about something called Libby, which is part of the library, and where you can download 5 books. You don't have to pay anything, it's free. And I always have on my phone a book to read. So wherever I go, if I'm sitting in a doctor's office or whatever, I always have a book with me. And I think since COVID started and I wasn't leaving the house, it gave me an opportunity. I would knit during the day, I would paint rocks during the day, and a part of the day I would read. I would take walks and, stay away from people. And that really got me through COVID. I didn't really miss much of anything. I really didn't mind it because I was always busy doing something that I enjoyed. And I would say in the last 3 years, I must have read about 200 books. I just like working with my hands. I like making things, and I like making people happy. I think that's basically it. I mean, I knit scarves and hats, and I give them to all my friends. People appreciate it, and that makes me feel good. I have a good feeling when I do things for people. I make rocks for people, and then they send them to people. Like my daughter has asked me to make rocks for her friends, and they don't live nearby. They live in other parts of the country. And I say, take the rock and bring it to the post office and mail it to them. So they have traveled far, but not by me, by people who take them and give them to other people. Actually, when I see how excited they get about it, that's my payment, really. And then knowing that they'll do a good deed, that they'll help somebody out. I have friends in Florida who have 3, 4, 5 rocks in their garden. And whenever I go to visit them and I see it, it just makes me feel good. I'm blessed. I'm really blessed in my life. I have 2 wonderful children. I have 4 delicious grandchildren. I don't have any worries about, having to live out on the street or where my next meal is coming from. And I know there are a lot of people who need help. So if I can do something, even in a small way, to help, I'm going to do it.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.